Hello everyone, welcome to this new video and welcome to the first episode of my new series which is going to be called Thorrk Hot Takes, and the objective of those videos is to create some shorter videos where we touch on a specific subject regarding trading card games and hopefully install some interesting conversation about trading card games and maybe create some interesting discussion around that. So the first topic that I wanted to talk about is the concept of net decking, which I'm sure there's going to be some conversation in the community. It always happens when a game first start emerging. Right now, we haven't seen any major tournaments being played, so there's nothing really to net deck at the very moment. But in the near future, there will be bigger tournaments, and people are definitely going to be grabbing some lists on the internet. I'm already pretty sure that a lot of people have been experimenting with some lists that you've seen on the internet, including some on my channel. And I wanted to touch on this very interesting subject. And the question is net decking a bad thing for the game? So first of all, let's all agree on what net decking is. It's the idea of someone going out there on the internet and grabbing a list from that is not his or her list, and then use that list in tournaments afterwards. And usually people will net deck from tournament winning list. That's usually what happens. So first of all, let's talk about what is actually controversial about this topic. And the controversial thing is like there's a lot of people who do not like net decking. They think it has a very bad impact on the game. And why is that so? So there's multiple reasons. The first reason is that people simply think that you will never learn how to make a proper deck if all you do is just go on the internet and grab a deck. You will never learn how to build your own decks if you are just stealing other people's list. The second argument that people use is that the fact that everybody takes net decks, or a lot of people net decks, means that it uniformizes the game, and it ends up just everybody playing the same list, which is what we call the meta game actually. And this is bad for the game because the game would be far more interesting if everybody was building their own list and then coming at a tournament, and it would create a far more diverse meta game if that was the case. There would actually maybe not be any meta. There would just be people playing different decks. And the third major argument is that people saying that if you're not deck building in a trading card game, you're not engaging with the intended experience of creating your own decks and then playing with that deck. So there's an intended experience, which is that we should build this deck, build your own deck, and then play with it. And it is what is fun about trading card games. And you're not engaging with that experience if you are net decking. So now let's go now into the counter arguments, which are my argument and my case in favor of net decking and the reason why you should net deck. So against the first argument of saying that that you will not learn how to build a deck if you are net decking all the time, I completely disagree with that. I think it's the absolute opposite of that. Anybody can build a deck as long as you know the basic rules of building a deck. That anybody can build a deck. So what makes the difference between people who build decks and people who makes you a real deck builder, quote unquote, also is, are you a good deck builder? Are you making decks that are powerful and competitive? This is far more difficult to do. As I said, building any decks, anybody can do it. Building strong and effective decks that will allow you to win games and even possibly win new tournaments, that is a completely different ballgame. And you will learn much faster how to build a competitive deck if you did your homework and you did net deck. Basically, net decking, so grabbing a list from the internet and playing that list, is actually not only is not going to hinder your ability to build deck, it's actually a requirement. You should definitely net deck before you start building decks. The same way a movie maker, like a screenwriter or someone who makes movies, needs to have seen a lot of movies before making his first movie Someone who writes a book needs to have read a lot of books before writing his first books. A game designer needs to have played a lot of games before starting to make his own game. You, as someone who wants to build decks that are powerful, you need to have played a lot of powerful decks before that, because then it's going to give you a good understanding of what a strong deck is, and not only a superficial understanding that you would get simply by looking at the list, but a real deep understanding because you've played with the deck, especially played it in a competitive environment. So my opinion is like you should absolutely net deck if you want to learn the game, if you want to learn the meta. The other argument that I have is that you will not understand when you build a deck, you don't build it in a vacuum, you build it to fit a certain environment, to counter a specific environment, to counter a specific meta. So you need to learn what this meta is if you want to be able to build a deck that will effectively fight against it. So I think that net decking not only is actually an essential part of becoming a good deck builder. So you need to start doing your homework and looking at the list before you actually start building your own list. My other argument is that netdecking does not prevent you from creating your own decks. Like, it's not because you're doing your homework on one side by playing decks that are very powerful that and maybe playing those decks in tournament, that you cannot create your own homebrew on the side and have a little bit of fun and experimenting. And actually, as I said, as time goes by, having played those powerful decks will help you build powerful decks in the future. Therefore, this does not prevent you from engaging with the intended experience. So yeah, you're not really missing out on any fun. Actually, it's gonna make building decks more enjoyable because you will build decks and those decks will actually be powerful. So not only, I think it actually enhanced the experience, in my opinion. So the next subject I want to touch on is a question that is interesting is, would TCG be better off if net decking was impossible? So let's say that we go back to the 90s when people were playing Magic the Gathering and there were no internet back in those days. So therefore net decking was technically not possible back in those days, and people will simply build their decks, show up in tournament, and hope that those decks do well. Well, the reality is that actually net decking, or the equivalent of net decking back in those days, very much did still exist. Basically, people would go on article. There would be newspapers talking about articles of latest decks. There would be people communicating among each other, playtesting among each other, copying each other's list, and all this really much existed back in those days. And even in the mid 90s, where first Magic Competitive started off, people very much still copies each other's list, and they were very much a meta game. So all this still existed. It was just not as accessible as it is nowadays. So the next question you can probably ask yourself is, would making net decking less accessible, would that be a good thing? And the answer to that question, in my opinion, is no, because all you're doing is basically gatekeeping the powerful decks among a very small group of people who are able to share that information, who are able to share each other's decks and stuff like that. And I don't think it would be a good thing for the game. And also, the most important, it wouldn't actually be possible because you cannot. Now the internet is here, it's a reality that we are in, and there's no escape from that. So my next argument is that if you do not want to net deck, if you think that net decking sucks and it enroots the game, I have a couple of things that I want to tell to those people. The first thing I want to say is that net decking does not prevent you from building new unique decks that are going to be very strong. It actually helps you because, once again, it gives you information about what are the decks that you want to beat. The second thing I want to say is that, and it's actually a very rewarding. It's actually a very rewarding experience that you are able to produce a deck that is able to shake the meta and change the fate of the game. It's far more difficult to do. It is far more difficult to create a deck that is able to compete and beat all those net decks or all those meta decks. But it's also a much more rewarding and fun experience. Like, you're gonna feel a feeling of accomplishment that is much bigger than just building a random decks and being destroyed by everybody. So the other thing I want to say as well is, like, if you don't like the idea of people playing deck that is not theirs, I also really advise you to explore the option of playing in limited, playing in draft. Uh, in a draft, so you can basically be a very bad deck builder and do very well in a trading card game, because all you have to do is copy a very good list, and if you're a very good pilot, you will do very well. However, in draft, there is no escape. You have to be a good deck builder if you want to be able to be good in draft, because you need to know what cards to select, what card to draft with, and then what kind of decks you can build with the deck that you produce. So if you are valuing deck building more than you're valuing the ability for you to pilot a deck, I strongly advise you to give drafting and limited a try. So I'm pretty much that almost everybody here that watches this video is going to agree with me, at least the vast majority will. But I think those are interesting points that maybe you can raise to your friends, or arguments that you can use in a conversation within the community, to convince people that maybe net decking is not such a bad thing, and it is and maybe making and building a more accepting community, and maybe make people enjoy trading card games more for what they are, at least now with the internet. So without further ado, thank you very much for following that video, and if you got any opinions or additional thoughts about this conversation, please post on the comments below, and also if you want to see other videos like this, like and subscribe, so I know that those videos are successful and I want to make more of them. Anyway, thank you very much, and see you next time.